one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. We will start with our consent agenda and minutes from the September 13th meeting. If council's had a chance to review that, I would take a motion.
I will make a motion that we approve the consent agenda for the September 27th, 2022 meeting and the meeting minutes from the September 13th, 2022 meeting.
All right, that's Councilmember Bowers and Nilsson, all in favor?
Aye.
That's everybody. Any conflicts of interest? Tonight's agenda. Okay, public comment. So this is the portion if the public has anything for us, we'll give you each 3 minutes. If it's not something that you're on the agenda for. Anybody want to speak to us? No? Okay. Reports. I will be gone next week. I'll be up at the league. Their annual, is it their annual conference? Is that what it's called? That's up in Salt Lake. And then we also have that meeting on the 5th.
The 6th, the CIB.
The 6th, the CIB.
What are any of the dates of the week?
The league's Wednesday through Friday.
I may end up going since I have to be up there for CIB. I wasn't planning on the original.
Yeah. So what's going on next week? Other than that, I don't have anything. I don't think. City Council. Anybody have a report?
We have nothing on the agenda about the Dutch oven days. It was fantastic. Give a huge kudos to everyone who worked on that. I sat in a booth most of the day, and that didn't go so well, but the rest of it was wonderful. Kids had fun.
That's a good
A
turnout.
lot of work. Yeah, good. It started slow and then it picked up a lot. I was surprised how many people came. It was a great day.
Good. I wasn't here. I was up at Fall Festival up in Mona, up at the
Trader.
Lavender. What is that place called?
I don't know.
It's the essential oil place.
Yeah.
Young Living. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, the Red Barn.
No, it's Young Living. Young Living. Yeah.
They have their whole new stadium and
It's just
everything.
crazy place. But anyways,
Well, of course, the corn maze and the blow up slides, and that was, I mean, a huge hit. It was so
What did
fun.
they have a maze? But the corn that
the
they
corn pit.
The corn pit, sorry, the
Oh,
corn
okay.
pit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
with all the great rains we've had, I've had people saying, why doesn't the city take care of their weeds? 600 south and 300 west, right north of the dinosaur museum. The strip along the fence is just tons of goat heads.
Are you talking about a city property specific or just in general?
Right away,
The community, okay. What was that address that you said?
across from Carl and Jan Hunt's house.
What's the address? I have no idea.
600 south, 300
west. The north fence of the dinosaur museum.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about. Okay, thank you.
And look,
One
kitty
of the
quarter
few,
from the Ray's
one of
old
the few
house.
fences, one of the few streets that doesn't have curb and gutter.
Okay, thanks.
Any other reports from council? Good. Okay, city manager report, David.
Okay, a couple things. One is actually, because Pratt is out of town today, so I was gonna give a report about Dutch oven days. I'm just gonna kind of read some of the things that he said here. Our sponsors was Energy Fuels, SJ Pack, and USU. We gave out 350 pumpkins, now to 12, 16 teams in the cornhole tournament. SJ Pack gave out children's books, cookbooks, and some larger giveaways, and provided dinner for 300 community members. We had 22 vendors and over 1,500 people in attendance this year. It started out in 2019 with 7 vendors and 250 people, to give perspective. And next year will be the 5th year, and we're going to focus more on Dutch oven cook-off and getting more attendance and activities and competition. So it's really taken off, I think. And I've experienced this in other places I've been where you implement a fall festival. And fall is just a great time. Weather's a little more predictable than the spring, not as miserable sometimes as the summer, and people just really like to get out. Now that summer's over, it's a way to get out and do something fun at all times.
How many people participate in the Dutch oven cook-off?
He didn't mention how many people this year.
I just wondered how that turned.
participated.
Do you know? Only one. I wondered that. So
I
that
think
went
that's-
down a little bit from last year, because last year we had a lot.
Well, I know,
There was only one person cooking.
Was it you, Brett?
Where were you?
So I think that's why he had mentioned that they want to put more focus on promoting that next year and leading up to it. So,
Do some good prizes. People will enter.
That's a lot of work.
yeah, that's probably true.
they historically haven't gone very well. I mean, ever. I know the hardware store's done them before. Monticello's trying
you
to
know,
do one.
Last year we had, how many? 13?
But ARL did a Dutch oven cook-off like within a few days
It was
of
the day
that.
before, yeah.
And they said it looked like there was a lot of kids involved. So if you get those kids saying, hey, guys, you can win prizes and whatnot, doing
Do
it
the
at the
same
school,
thing, combine, yeah.
get them to come and cook again.
And I think that was
Or
the
wait for
FFA.
the fall event. Wait for the fall event.
Yeah, it was just the day before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's probably why then.
So let me make sure. Mention everything else. So I brought this up last council meeting, but Diane, our court clerk, will be retiring. Her last day will be on the 29th, I believe. She didn't really want a retirement party, so I'll actually be going to the energy fuels thing tomorrow, but leaving early because the mayor and I are gonna take her lunch. And some other police officers. Yeah. Please don't take that.
I need it. Take me
A couple other things to highlight. The general plan went out to bid this week. So hopefully we'll be getting a lot of good proposals. I sent out an email to other city managers in the state asking for references and who we may want to have the state forward that bid to. The Swallow's Nest, one that's been sitting on here for a while. Essentially it's being taken care of for under $1,000. So I'm gonna rip out the grass, plug the sprinklers and put in gravel to prevent runoff and flooding onto Swallow's Nest. So hopefully that'll be taken care of here in the coming weeks. So that'll be a good thing. And then, as was already mentioned, I'll be going up to the CIB funding meeting, and I likely will also go to the League of Cities and Towns. I originally wasn't going to go to the fall one, but if I'm going to be up there anyways, because there's some meetings on some of the housing issues that we've talked about in the past that I've been involved with. So it may be advantageous for me to attend it this year. So anyways, that's all I've got for my reports.
In regards to the pickleball courts, I had the tennis coaches reach out to me and asked if there's any way we could do another set of tennis courts with pickleball courts painted inside, so they had two sets here together.
Well,
Does any, I just didn't know if the grant would allow for
The
that.
grant, because we've
Yeah.
had those, I don't know, we can add, I mean, it might,
I mean, isn't it just a difference in the painting of the,
It's probably
it's a little
smaller.
bit size
it's
wise.
smaller,
It's-
yeah.
The pickleball courts are smaller.
Yeah, like generally, I've seen it the other way around where you have tennis courts, you paint pickleball court
That's what it would be. This would be-
inside,
yeah.
but what we're doing is pickleball court specific. But I think it's worth to note to see what can be done in conjunction with the pickleball courts to, improve the
If
area as a
it's
whole.
only a small, I don't know, if it's not that much of a difference, it might be worth looking into, but I told them I didn't know if the grant allowed it, so.
Yeah, and CDBG is pretty
they're
particular.
super, very specific about attending this meeting and like just so many different requirements.
I got it, we'll let you change. the
Yeah.
scope.
But we can, I mean, ask. It's
Well, I
not-
wouldn't change the scope for the grant, but if it
Well, the
ends up
scope
being
of the
tennis
project.
courts instead, tennis courts and pickleball courts with the grant, be upset about that.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's what.
We can have
the
Brad ask,
scope of it,
yeah.
the scope of it, yeah. But we'll try to find out, so. That's all I've got for now.
They said they had reached out to the city too and had never gotten a response, so so you're aware, I don't know
Oh, do you-
if that's
you
accurate
know-
or not.
Okay, I'll follow up with Brad. He would
I
be the
think it was
point
Brad,
person,
yeah.
so.
Okay. Any questions for David on his report? Okay, financial report, Kim.
this woman saying?
When that report is in there, the city council one, I think it's a little bit different than what I normally do. I
Yeah.
wanted some input from you, if you like this, or you want me to go back to more condensed. This is more in line with how the budget reports look. So,
I like
That's
it.
so today, I kind of like, it looked a
okay.
little easier to follow through.
To comprehend.
And
I can't read it because it's kind of small, so
That's what I was gonna say.
I might have to change it so I can make it bigger. for
We
you.
can work in the budget some
That's
micro,
fine.
or some magnifying
Yeah, we'll get you
glasses.
some readers. Do you have any questions at the beginning of the year? Months where I just felt like things were looking pretty good. At the beginning of the year, if you remember, sometimes we go out and buy everything that we budgeted, and so it kind of skews stuff a little bit. Sales tax seems to be looking good. The one thing I would point out is that I'm seeing interest rates starting to rebound finally. You see that the PTIF was at 2.2 at the end of August, so that's up from, I think we went down as far as 0.5. Now we're climbing back up, so that's.
And what'd you say it's at? It's probably out here.
That's
2.2.
It's on page 8, on the very first page of the.
Okay.
I think it's very transparent and for that reason, and I like numbers personally, but I think it's very transparent to the public as well, and I like that.
I'll continue to do it. And if you have any other suggestions, I'm happy to.
Okay, any questions for Kim on the budget finance report?
Good.
Okay, public works report, Terry.
Madam Mayor, Council, we've got the September 2022 Public Works Project Report in your packets. First item up is Westwater. The only thing that's really probably doing different there, we've advertised the well drilling portion of the deep well project. We expect to have a bid opening next month, and we'll bring hopefully a recommendation to council on October 25th to award the bid to the low bidder. We bid several options from a timing standpoint in there. And we're going to allow the bidders to choose to submit bids based on the length of time it'll take them to complete the project, just in an effort to get a little bit of competition. It's been pretty tough to get well drillers recently, from what I've been told by those in the industry. And so we're trying to make sure that we get some competitive bids. Are there any questions about Westwater or the deep well project specifically?
Who drilled our other 3? Was it Beeman?
No, I can't remember who it was. It was not Beeman. It's been too long. That was 14 years ago. Probably 16 years ago, and we tied them into our system 14 years ago. So it's been quite a little bit. Other questions on
The repairs on the, are not on Westwater. Continue, sorry, I'll ask later.
Okay, you can ask now while we're on
Oh, I was just-
water-ish topic.
The repairs on the well.
So well A, we pulled that pump and motor. The well driller took the pump and motor with him to check, make sure all the bearings and everything were okay. But the problem we have is a fault in the cable. And so that was the $69,000 rough price tag to get that taken care of. And so now we've got Four Corners Electric and Water Well Services looking for a conductor that could take us a couple months to get that size of conductor in that length. And so when we get those numbers, we'll bring them to council for approval.
Well, right now, when we had originally spoke, we had kind of gotten advice and consent to move forward with it under the premise of it's an emergency. So if you're still okay with that, I can give Terry the go ahead to just move forward with it once we know, just have him run it past me, or if you want him to bring it back to you, we can as well when we get those numbers. It's totally up to you.
I don't think it's an option. We gotta get it fixed, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it'd be nice to know updates, like if we hear anything, like let us know. But I think we're,
But if you're okay with advice and consent, I'd like to just be able to tell him, yes, move forward once we get some of those numbers.
The last discussion I remember on this, was that we were trying to determine if it was a more expensive problem or possibly a less expensive
And
problem.
we've determined.
We've
it's
determined
more
it's the more expensive problem.
Correct.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay, right,
Yeah.
exactly. So now you just need advice to move forward with the more expensive option.
If that's okay.
You know for sure it's that. Like someone came and looked at it and they said, you got to replace this whole entire line.
Yeah, we had those guys check it, and then we double checked it with Four Corners Electric and made sure that that assessment was correct.
Do we have any idea what caused the damage to it, why it failed?
It was on a splice, and so sometimes they're just not perfect. And when you're 1,000 feet down, you've got a lot of water pressure trying to get a little bit of moisture in that cable. So
Any way to make repairs on it, or is it just replace the whole thing?
I'm told that it's replaced the whole thing.
It's probably
You don't know where.
probably leached up.
Yeah, you don't know how far the water's gone, and so it's pretty tough that way.
So we'll get you the final numbers when we get that. It's about 69,000, right? Is that what you
Yeah,
said?
that was the estimate prior
So-
to pulling it, the guesstimate.
So if you're okay under the premise of the emergency, so that we don't have to wait till a council meeting to get on the agenda. I just need to make sure I got it by, I see some.
Only
nodding heads.
69,000.
Yeah.
Get her
I
done.
think an update would be good.
Yeah, I can
Are
do
you
it,
okay
but
if we
keep
move
everyone
forward?
posted on how it goes.
Councilmember Nielsen, I wasn't sure if I heard you. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, street project, we did a little bit of Silco work at Metal Arc subdivision and here in the city office. And then, the rest of that project will be construction for 2023 construction season. So we'll keep council posted as we get that project put together.
What's the dip in the high school road? Come around the corner if you're headed north, right in front of the,
Settlement on our storm drain project. Yeah, need to get that worked on, get it repaired.
And when you talk about the new asphalts around the Metal Arc subdivision, did the city complete that?
We did a seal coat on, so that's pretty standard. We'll put a product on there that protects the asphalt from the sun. And so other cities do require developers to do that within a year of doing the development, and
But we did it.
we did it. We do not require that developers do that.
So in the future, the maintenance of that street will be ours.
Oh, yeah. Dedicated street.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, it already is our maintenance now, and so we try and protect that asphalt, make it last as long as we can.
There's things, so when we go into the general plan, if there are things like that the council wants considered, like developer requirements like that, that's something that can be taken into account, or if you don't want to, but those are great questions and thoughts to consider during that.
who did
process.
that work?
Holbrook asphalt,
Did they do all of it?
yeah.
Cross 200?
So all the stuff up here was warranty work. They provide a 6-year guarantee on the product, and they had some spots that were shaded and issues that were kind of delaminated. And so we didn't pay for any of that work. up
I have
there.
issues that they didn't set up flags telling people this road's closed.
Yeah, they didn't do a really great, usually they're really good on that, but where they were just doing spot treatments, they didn't do a lot. of
Even if it would have been a sign, road work ahead, don't turn here. I got clear. I was coming down past the nursing home. So I had come all the way past Cheryl's Corner, I'm headed down past the nursing home, and all of a sudden the road's closed. And I've got a trailer on it. I'm like, where am I supposed to turn this around? So their lack of signage was a real annoyance to me. I don't know how many other people were
I
annoyed.
noticed the same thing
I
that,
got to.
I noticed the same thing that morning and had people comment, and so Terry spoke to them to address that, and it was
I think
addressed.
they improved a little bit, and so. I guess
Anyway,
it
looks
could've been
good.
better. The other project I have on here is our AMI project, and we're gonna talk a bunch about that later on the agenda, so maybe I'll skip over it. Natural gas master plan, I have finished the draft RFP and shot that off to other staff members to take a look at before we advertise, but I would expect that we will bring that to council the second meeting in November for approval of a consultant to help us with that master plan. That's the tentative schedule there. Questions? Okay, that's my report.
Thank you. I guess the next, we have the forest plan revision
Terry,
as well.
still you the force.
Oh, it's still, I forgot about that. Okay, so Some of you haven't been on the council long enough to even know about this. The Manti LaSalle Forest is doing a forest plan revision. They haven't done that for a long time. Mayor Lyman asked that I attend those meetings when they have them. It was going pretty slow. Then we had COVID and it totally stalled out. And I think the Forest Service has had quite a bit of turnover in their organization throughout the forest. And so just a few reminders. This is for the whole Manti LaSalle National Forest. So it's, San Pete District up there, LaSalle and Monticello Ranger districts. They held a meeting here just a couple of weeks ago. They've done, we're now currently working on the draft environmental impact statement. That's a 12-month phase, and we're kind of in the middle of it. And that will be released, and a public process for comment will be incorporated into this phase that we're in right now. They've already taken a bunch of public comment from the previous phases. Then the next phase will be the final environmental impact statement, about 9 months, and then they'll release it. And there'll be an objection period of approximately 6 months. And the final plan will then be approved. Keep in mind, this plan is almost all-inclusive with the exception of travel management. They are not trying to tackle that right now, which is something that our citizens will be, the majority of our citizens will be more interested in that part of the forest plan than the rest of the management plan. So this is independent from, because for the whole forest, from any Bears Ears management stuff, that would be a totally separate plan and separate process. And not all of our forest areas in the monument either. And so that kind of makes sense. Just to hit the two main alternatives that they're kind of talking about, really just evaluate how much human intervention there will be on the forest. There's, of course, folks who are pushing for limited human intervention, more wilderness area, less mechanical, brush hogs and all of that, and leaning more towards prescribed burning. And then there's, quite a few folks who would like to see mechanical vegetation treatments, less wilderness areas, and then more acres versus less acres for timber harvest. Those are kind of some of the big issues. From the public comment, the forest kind of established 5 areas where there was quite a bit of interest or key issues, and sustainable recreation being one of those. Support for traditional and cultural ways of life, which would be Native American ceremonial uses, grazing, those types of things. And then ecological resilience would be the third. Examples of that: protecting and preserving water quality, protecting wildlife. The fourth is protected areas. An example of that's designated wilderness. And then 5 was objectives, and I didn't put any examples on here, and I'm not sure I remember what those objectives. I guess that was kind of a little bit broad as far as what are our objectives with the forest, and that ties back more into human intervention in the management of the forest. So I'll keep trying to attend those meetings as they have them and move forward, based on what we're seeing after each environmental impact statement. There'll be another opportunity for comment. I've commented, from a city public works standpoint, specifically as far as, all the water infrastructure that we have up here on the Blue Mountain and everything. And so from that standpoint, most of the comments that I've given are just based on how the forest management plan impacts Atlantic City specifically in the way we interact with the forest. So questions on that?
The comments, will that be an online thing? Will citizens be able to get on?
I would think that would be public meetings, online. They've used all of those different resources previously. So And then back to the travel management plan. Once this is all done, you know, a few years from now, they do expect to then tackle the travel management.
The council could draft a resolution. I mean, if we wanted to take a stance on any of these things as a council vote, we could draft a resolution probably and submit it
Yeah.
on our take on where we stand on these issues, because I think there's probably, well, I shouldn't say that, but we could if we chose to. It's probably important enough that we should consider it.
I'll keep you posted when those public comment periods are coming up.
You kind of have a feel of which way they're leaning in these meetings,
Yeah.
just kind of.
Not really,
Probably pretty
so-
tight-lipped, I guess.
We're a cooperating agency, so the meetings I attend, they aren't public. In fact, the last one, somebody with a phone number joined, wouldn't say who they were, and they just booted them before the meeting even started. And so they're pretty objective. I don't know if they're leaning one way or another. You know, I think where this plan is for the forest as a whole, I think that helps us because some of the more radical ideas that are associated with us down here aren't so much further north. So that probably helps as they try and find a balance.
Because we would probably be, I would imagine, I don't know for sure, but that we would be on an opposite side of those, for example, in Spanish Valley. And so
I would think
in
so.
that northern area. So it probably would be good for the city to take a stance on some of these issues. But
Where we have, you know, Farron and Manti and all those folks too, that
Yeah.
helps.
Okay. Any other questions on the forest plan revision? Okay, thanks, Terry.
thank you.
All right. Yeah. Next on our agenda is presentations. We have the Local Governments Trust Award. Mike Staggs here with us, so we'll give you some time.
Excellent, thank you. Sounds like I'll have to make a trip back though to try out some pickleball courts.
We will.
Hopefully next year.
Yeah. So council, mayor, thank you for allowing me to come here to the meeting today and to present an award to the city. So first off, my name's Mike. As it says on the agenda, Mike Stagg. I'm with Utah Local Governments Trust. For those who aren't aware, Utah Local Governments Trust, we are Blinding City's insurance company. And what we do, what I do there is I'm a risk manager there. So as part of my job, I go around and visit all our members and do risk assessments and do site inspections and things like that. Part of that is we go in and we take a really deep dive, no pun intended, into swimming pools. And because those are huge liabilities, kids there all the time, you know, and we want to make sure that these facilities are being run safely and that the management there is doing everything they can do to keep the pool up to code and, you know, safe for the community to come in and enjoy. Before I came to work for the trust, I actually worked for the American Red Cross. So the actual certifying agency for like lifeguards and things like that. So I helped write their curriculum. And before that, I was a recreation director in Park City. I was an aquatics director for Salt Lake County. And before that, I started as a 15-year-old lifeguard. So David, you can tell your lifeguards that they can.
What is your retirement date so we can move them up?
Yeah, right. Push them on up. But so through all that, like I gained a lot of experience in a lot of different aspects of facility management and things like that. So when we go in and do these visits there, we're looking really, really closely at not only the operations of the facility, so how the lifeguards do. We put them through skill drills. We make them do like their different rescues, active rescues, passive rescues, CPR, spinal rescues, anything that could happen potentially at the pool. I put them through the paces and see how they do. We also look at the total operation. So in-service trainings, when are those done? How do they onboard their staff? How do they rotate the staff through each of the different guard stations? How do they orient their staff to the pool and make sure that the guards are watching the water like they're supposed to? And doing everything that they can do in order to make sure that the facility is safe and the kids are safe and the patrons are safe when they go there. We also look at the back of the house. We look at water quality. We take chemical tests. We go through the pump room. We look through and look at the records of the chemicals and the records of maintenance and all that kind of stuff. So it's really a very holistic approach to looking how the facility is being run, not only from a ground level standpoint with the lifeguards, but back of the house and everything that goes into that. And so for this award that I'm going to present today is actually for 2021. I know, sorry. These took a while to get done though, because they're really nice. Is for 2021, and we're presenting our silver award to the Wellness Center for the work that they did there. And what we do is we aggregate all these scores together, their lifeguard performances, the back of the house walkthrough. And this walkthrough is all based on the Model Aquatic Health Code, which is put out by the Centers for Disease Control. And so it's a national organization with national standards. And we know that the San Juan County Health Department, the Utah State Health Department has not mandated these standards yet. But we think that's the way they're going to go as different counties and cities around us start to adopt that. Like, for example, Cortez is just across the way here in Durango. In Colorado, they fully adopted the MAC, this Model Aquatic Health Code. So it's only a matter of time before Utah does too. And so we use that as kind of our basis. And then we give scores and everything based around that. We aggregate those scores all together. And Blinding City, in the year 2021, they were a silver award recipient. Now I can tell you that this year, I've already completed our visits for this year. I come out every summer and do this and bother David and his staff, and they do such a great job. And this year we saw a 10% increase in their scores from last year, which is phenomenal, which is the best that we've seen across the landscape of the trust members. So there's 32 facilities, 32 cities, entities that have aquatic facilities with a total of about 44 pools. And David and his team were able to increase their scores from 2021 to 2022 by about 10% or 10 points, which was the largest, like I said, the largest scale increase we saw. So it's really a testament to what David has done with him and his staff and the lifeguards there, that they were able to improve so many things and just make it so much better for the public to be there. And now when I came out last year, there wasn't anything that was like, oh no, shut this place down. It was, this is a well-run, very safe facility. What can we do now to take it to the next level and make it just that a little bit better? What can we do to help the lifeguards get just a little bit better so they don't miss something? And we have a kid on the news because we don't want that. And David and his team have done just a fantastic job. So council and mayor, thank you so much for the support that you guys give to David and his staff there at the pool and at the wellness center to do what they need to do, to prioritize safety, to prioritize making sure that they have a good quality program there, because we see it. But I see it at the trust, and I see it with my job and the things I do with the facilities I visit, that this is a very, very well-run facility. And overall, the city does a fantastic job. It was interesting. As I was coming out, I had a meeting with David just earlier today, and I was talking with him, and usually I'll pull like claim reports or loss reports from insurance claims that we get coming through. In the last 5 years, anyone care to guess how many the city of Blanding has? 0. Wow. 0 claims, 0 insurance claims, workers' compensation, liability, those kind of claims. Yeah, you guys are doing a fantastic job. And David and I have chatted about how we're going to keep moving forward with these safety initiatives, with you guys really leading a charge and being an example that I really hold in high esteem here in this corner of the state, with what you guys do, the programs you have, with the stuff that the Public Works does, with the stuff that Parks and Rec and David and his team does, just to prioritize safety. And so we're really, really proud of that. And we thank you, Mayor and Council, for your support of those programs, for taking those things so seriously. So with the Mayor's and Council's blessing, I'd like to ask David to come up for me. Please.
Definitely.
And just present him this award and just thank you for all your hard work and everything you do and your staff. I mean, you guys are You guys are fantastic. You do such a great job.
We appreciate you.
Yeah.
From the podium.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank
You guys, I'm happy to answer any questions about what we do or the program if you guys have anything for me.
Council?
That was an excellent present, very motivating. Well, you were a very good speaker. I liked it.
Thanks. I love it. I love what I do, and I love that I get to celebrate things like this. I mean, the safety award for a swimming pool is the pool here is such a great commodity for the community that you guys have here. I mean, you're the only game in town for all of these kids. And you do such a great job. They do such a great job there. The team there is fantastic. So again, thank you for the support that you give them. That's really just what I wanted to convey is the support is fantastic. So thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, appreciate it. Okay, congrats, David and staff and the city, I guess, yeah, good job. Okay, discussion items.
Mayor, if I could, this
Oh,
won't
yes.
be as, I should have done this in my reports, and it's a little sheepish following that great award presentation, but from the dinner and recognition for the Westwater Power Project, we received this plaque from the Navajo Tribal Utility Authority, so I just wanted to recognize that in the meeting and show it to you. So
They actually did have one.
yeah, we just sent it, or they just sent it and we received it, so.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, now discussion items. So we'll go with our justice court discussion first.
Okay, so I'll do a brief overview, and then I have Jim Peters from the state here, who's going to speak to this item as well, just a little bit. The short and skinny, like we talked about last week, is our judge and our full-time court clerk are both retiring. And so the real question is for the council, and I'm just going to give you the Reader's Digest summary here, is do we want to keep the court or do we want to dissolve the court? And the court right now, it's in the black. It brings in a small net income, 10,000, 30,000, depending on the year. So for me, financially, it's not a problem to continue doing the court. It does create a little more management of staff and procedures and things. You could dissolve the court, but what would happen in dissolving the court is then all justice court cases would then go through the county. The county could not charge us for that service. However, because they would provide the judge and the prosecutor, they would receive the respective state funding for that. The two issues that are real cons of doing this is if we dissolve it, we can never bring it back. The second is, and this is more the political temperament of my interpretation of the political temperament from our city council, is the county commission gets to decide who the judge is. And whether it turns over, some years we could have great county commissioners, other years we don't. So that kind of takes away the local control that you as a city council have to determine who our local judge is. And I guess a third thing is it takes away convenience factor. If you think about it, really, Blanding City is more centrally located here in San Juan County. And so those are the real convenience factors. Now, if we were in the red every year with court, I would be saying, let's do away with it. I'd be really concerned, but we're not. It's in the black. And so those are kind of my thoughts. Honestly, you as a council could go any direction. We're just looking for advice. Essentially, we're looking for advice and consent to rehire a new court, new judge, or not rehire a new judge. That's essentially what we're looking for. And I'm going to let Jim take a moment to maybe speak to a few things, and then if there's questions before you as a council kind of have discussions.
Thank you. Let me introduce myself as well as Travis Erickson, who's here. I'm Jim Peters. I'm the Justice Court Administrator. My office is up in Salt Lake City, so I work with all the justice courts in the state. Travis is the court administrator for juvenile and district court. That doesn't have a courthouse or a courtroom here in Blanding per se, but he's working on things that will make that that service more available to your residents. And I wanted you to be aware of that in case you have any questions. His office is up in Price, and he makes it as far down as Monticello oftentimes, but Blanding as well. So with regard to the justice courts, they've summarized it perfectly. The option that faces Blanding at the moment, with the resignation upcoming of Judge Hazelton and the retirement of your clerk, Diane Bradford, is what to do now and what that decision entails. So I thought it would be helpful maybe if I walk the council through the process of hiring a new judge. I know that it wasn't that long ago that Judge Walker was on the bench, and so maybe some of you remember the transition from him to Judge Hazelton and the process that you had to go through for that. But for those of you who aren't familiar with that, I wanted to explain it. It actually takes several months to get a new judge on the bench. And so the sooner we get started with that, if that's how you decide to go, the better it's going to be. We want to minimize the gap between Judge Hazelton and the next judge to the extent possible. But as I walk through each of these steps and tell you what the timelines are associated with each of them, you'll see how they add up to get us to 6 to 8 months. We can move faster than that, but only to some degree. So the very first thing that we would do if the council decides to move ahead with hiring another judge is the administrative office of the courts, which is who I'm with, would put out a press release. I've drafted everything and finalized it except for these yellow sections here that I can talk to Dave about later. But what that does is it sets forth the minimum qualifications for a justice court judge in this area of the state. They don't need a law degree. They do need to have lived in Utah for the last 3 years, and they need to have lived in San Juan County, or a county that touches San Juan County, for the last 6 months. And they need to be a citizen of the United States as well.
Could I interject? Would you tell the council what we would do interim during that 6 to 8 months without Judge Hazelton?
Yeah, so my understanding is Judge Hazelton will stay on the bench for the next, through the end of the year. He could still help beyond that. There's nothing saying that he couldn't. But to provide that coverage, we would need to work with him, and I've talked to him and he would be willing to do that, but there's other options as well.
We could contract with someone at a price, or we can contract with him to continue until we fill the position, essentially.
Yeah, what we don't want to do is take that choice away from Blanding. So any temporary judge that fills in would be somebody that you approved of. You'd do a resolution that approved any sitting judge in the district, or a senior judge, someone who's been a judge before and retired, but has senior judge status, so that you retain control over that, even the temporary judge as well. So we're not going to go off and do anything without your consent that way. But we'll work together to make sure that there, like I say, to minimize the gap between Judge Hazelton leaving the bench here and getting his replacement on board. And he would be the obvious choice, but there's other options as well.
Thank you.
So we get this advertisement out, and we have to have it out there for 15 days. And that's the first decision that gets complicated, is we can have it out longer, but that just adds to the timeline, right? If we don't have it out long enough and we don't get at least 9 qualified applicants to put in, then we have to extend it anyway. So the real trick in getting this, in effectively filling Judge Hazelton's position, is to get the word out and get as many people to apply as we possibly can. In all likelihood, here in Blanding, we'll probably need to extend it, which would take us out to probably 45 days. But at the same time, what we're doing, and maybe again, some of you might have been involved with this last time, but at the same time, we're putting together a nominating commission. This is a commission that will vet the applications and decide who they want to interview, and bring the applicants in that they want to talk to, and narrow it down to 3 to 5 people or so that they will then pass on to the mayor. So let me tell you a little bit about that nominating commission, because again, not the state taking this choice away from you. It consists of 5 people. 2 of those people are appointed by Blanding itself. Typically, and you can go whichever way you want with this, but typically I recommend the city manager and the court clerk. Particularly the court clerk is one who knows as well as anyone what it takes to be a good judge. They see it day in and day out, and they'll be able to recognize the good qualities in the candidates, and they'll be able to recognize the red flags that might be missed by others. But so Blanding appoints 2 people. A 3rd person comes from the local bar association. A 4th person comes from the county. San Juan will appoint somebody. And then a 5th person comes from, and I don't know what the mayor's association looks like down here, if there's a COG or if it's just a lunch that you guys have every month or whatever, but the mayors will get together and they'll appoint a 5th person. So like I say, probably 45 days for the vacancy to be advertised. We're putting together the nominating commission at the same time, and hopefully at the end of that period, the commission gets together, it reviews all the people who applied, decides who they want to interview, and then they get back together again to actually conduct those interviews. Once they've narrowed it down to 3 to 5 people, those names then go out for public comment. And that's out for 10 days. As long as no negative comments come back, then we pass a packet on to the mayor, and you have 30 days to go through the finalists, interview people, have us dig up the dirt, whatever you want to do in terms of your due diligence to decide the one person that you would then recommend to the whole council. So you have 30 days to do that, and then the council has 30 days to approve your decision. You don't have to take your 30 days, and you all don't have to take your 30 days. So that's where we can save some time on the back end. If we do receive a negative comment, question?
Yes, I have a question. So is Judge Hazelton retiring from the Justice Court Monticello and Monticello Justice?
No, just Blanding as of right now.
Yeah, so he'll continue to be a judge up there.
So he doesn't throw that big of conflict into the whole mess. He's not retiring from those 2 also.
Correct. Even if he were though, and he were interested in being a senior judge, we could get that approved by the Supreme Court. He'd still be available to help if he were interested in doing that. And I haven't talked to him
I just
about
hadn't heard that. I just knew he was the judge in all 3 places, so.
Right. Yeah, so he'll still.
That was
be
my
in-
first question.
Okay.
If we do get a negative comment back after that 10-day comment period, then it slows things down a little bit, because we go back to the applicant and say, well, this is what somebody's saying about you. What's your response? And then that response goes back to the nominating commission, and they have to decide whether, in light of the comment and the defense for it, whether they still want to advance that name for your consideration.
What's the parameters in which you would define a negative comment? So that, I mean, anybody could say anything about anyone. So I just want to, do you have parameters, or it's just anything negative?
Anything negative.
You were drinking, David, and I saw you.
I just drink my water, you're right.
Honestly, more often than not, what does come in are the positive comments, like, oh, here's 15 letters of recommendation. Yeah, you should hire this guy as the best scoutmaster ever. Negative comments come along every now and again, but it's actually not that common. Anyway, so then we get to the end of the 30 days and the 30 days and the 45 and the 10 days. All those things added up together get us to several months. But even at that point, once the council has ratified the mayor's decision, and if you don't, by the way, we start all over. So keep that in mind.
It's gonna be a
We
trust you, Mayor.
Once that's all done, before the judge can actually take the bench and start hearing cases, he or she will need to go through a new judge orientation up in Salt Lake. That's actually statutory. It's a prerequisite to the Judicial Council certifying them as a justice court judge, which should happen with any luck sometime in January when they have their meeting. But again, that would mean we'd have to get from start to finish in 3 or 4 months, and we've got the holidays in there. So that might be a little ambitious, but it is possible. We just did a process for Utah County from start to finish in 2 months. which was unprecedented, but it did work out. So we can go as fast or as slow as you want. If we don't make the new judge orientation in January, the next one wouldn't be until April.
What are the limits on who can apply as far as like, are there anyone that cannot apply?
Yeah, could you read us the qualifications?
Like, can everyone on this table apply to meet your 9? Or I know the answer, but.
Oh, even if they don't really want the job.
Right.
Just to speed the process.
Work the system. I'll let you all decide how you want to proceed.
Yeah.
Qualifications are, you have to be at least 25 years of age, a citizen of the United States, a Utah resident for at least 3 years, and have earned a high school diploma or a GED. In addition, they must be a resident of San Juan County or an adjacent county for at least 6 months immediately preceding appointment.
Can the city add its own requirements on that?
Not in the announcement, because these are the minimum statutory qualifications. The way you would say you wanted a law degree, and even though it wasn't necessarily required, that would be the nominating commission or the mayor's process or the council's process to eliminate people that didn't meet your higher qualifications.
Yeah, so could Mr. Walker serve as an interim?
He won't.
He won't, you talk to him?
I've
I
talked to him.
okay, all right.
He's like, nope, I'm done.
Not gonna.
Serve my time. That's what he told me.
Well, yeah, and when he resigned before, he wasn't interested in becoming a senior judge, so.
Okay.
He would not be an option right now because senior judges have to maintain training number of hours each year. So that's basically the process. Like I say, it can be lengthy and frustrating, and as you have questions along the way, don't hesitate to call and say, no, wait, how does this work again? Because this seems like it's taken forever. So I just wanted to warn you about that up front. Realistically, we're probably shooting for the April new judge orientation, but we can do our very best to get to the January one.
I just think we're gonna have a hard time finding 8, 9 people to apply for it.
So
Now, and let me clarify.
yeah, I was gonna say that was the 15 days.
Yeah, what happens then if we still don't have 9 people after the second, right? We take whoever we have. So it only gets extended one time.
And it has to go to 45 days?
Well, and the only reason I come up with that is because we keep it open for 15 days. We see what trickles in through the mail. Then we extend it for another 15 days. We see what trickles in through the mail. So we really get to about 45 by the time that's all said and done. But it doesn't go beyond that. We only extend it for one time.
Okay.
Initiate, release the hounds.
We know in East Carbon and even in Miller County, when all was said and done, we only had 2 applicants we were working with. And so, and that may be the case down here.
I think the only thing that I would add to that is if you feel like none of the applicants meet the standard that you as the city want, or even the commission that's put together, we can extend it as much as we need, right? Essentially.
If you feel like it would be beneficial, there probably comes a point where it's like, we've gotten everybody we're going to get. All right. We either move forward with this pool or we reconsider keeping the court.
Can you remind me why if it goes away, we can't bring it back? Is it because of new laws?
Well, dissolving the justice court makes it go away once and for all. So if you wanted it back, it would be as though you were creating one from scratch. And the statutory standard for that says that you have to demonstrate a need. So it might be a little harsh to say never, but the rule of thumb that the Judicial Council has gone by is there one within 25 miles? When as it happens, there is barely, right? The only one of these I've seen go through, and you may or may not be familiar with the geography, whoever was doing the Lavender Days, I guess you would. Okay.
Just there, I don't know.
Nephi has a justice court and Mona wanted one.
Okay.
Mona's only 7 miles north of Nephi. And the council's view was people in Mona, they go into Nephi for school, they go into Nephi for movies, they go into Nephi for groceries, they can go into Nephi for justice court. So I'd say you're right there on the brink of being able to demonstrate a need. You wouldn't get laughed out of the room if you came to the council and asked to reinstate the court. And again, I know that the political reality down here is absolutely valid. But one of the other options between keeping the court going and closing it all together would be to do an interlocal with the county. And the main advantage with that is Blanding would cease to operate a justice court. It would go dormant. So it doesn't go away. It's just not operating at the moment. And the county would run it, and maybe you convince them to create a precinct down here in Blanding, and people even come here, and it's the San Juan County Justice Court, but it's held in Blanding.
Isn't that basically what he's doing anyway right now?
No, because he just happens to be the judge for 3 separate courts. So when he comes here, he's the Blanding City judge. He's not the San Juan County judge.
So but what you're getting at is it looks the same, but the procedure is different.
So the difference is, though, between dissolving altogether and doing this interlocal is if you ever decided you didn't like how it was working with the county, you terminate the interlocal agreement, you hire a judge, you get the clerk on board, everything, we get back up to speed with the operating standards, and you're back to running your own court. And that law was clarified a few years ago to make sure that you absolutely get to do that. There's no question.
Do we own that building they're in?
We do. However, on that note, we've talked about the conditions of that building with staff, and I've talked about it with Jim. And we would prefer, actually, when we get the new judge, to move court into the city council chambers. It's every Wednesday in the afternoon. We feel like this would be a more appropriate and accommodating, I'm saying that in a very tactful way, more appropriate and accommodating to hold it here.
This is a much nicer setting for a
That's also because we've always had one court clerk until recently. That does bring concerns that one person is managing money coming in and coming out without anyone else there checking. So the other advantage of bringing it here is our court clerk would be here with me, Kim, and our utility clerk to help verify.
That one day a week?
Yeah, that one. Well, people can come in other days to make payments.
Would the justice court clerk come down here to work with these guys here in this building?
Yeah, we have an office space upstairs that the justice court clerk could use.
So what do we propose we do with the other building?
Well, it's still the police department, so we could allow the police department to then use that extra space. And then if we ever need to, hire an additional officer, there's another office there, another meeting room.
Well, to get on with this topic, I'm opposed to doing away with the court. As far as, because I believe that we need to keep our own identity. I think what Monticello has done with doing away with their police force has been a disaster for Monticello City. I could see the same thing happening with doing away with our court. So on that vote, your marching orders are, I guess, to get
So we're
us.
just looking for advice and consent.
Any other comments on that?
100%, with Councilman Grover. I don't think we should get rid of it. I think, we do to make it better, and I think everybody's lining it out. This room would be a lot better. It would flow better. It would look better. I think we need to keep it. I don't think it's a good idea.
We need
to
to do
ever think
everything
about
we can to find somebody to fill that position.
I agree. I think there's so many benefits that far outweighs any negativity to keeping it. I'm in strong support of keeping the court.
And I like the fact that it gives the county 2 judges instead of 1. I think it helps our police forces.
Or 2 judge seats at least instead of 1. Right?
What, a question I had is, what is the savings? So we know that the revenue is 10 to 30,000 annually. What would the savings be if we didn't have it? I mean, because you wouldn't
Yeah,
have.
you'd have a loss, right? Because you're not bringing in that money, right? Is that?
Well-
You said you're in the black.
Yeah, because all the expenses would go away.
We'd be at a loss between 10 to 30,000 a year. It's not significant,
Basically, it's taking care of itself.
right?
So
It's fun.
But we wouldn't have the expenses of paying a judge or a court clerk. I mean, those are not small expenses.
but
But-
even with that, we're still,
The
Right,
revenue.
right. I
We just
follow
don't have, we wouldn't have to manage those expenses essentially. Now, keep in mind, say a year from now or 5 years from now, we find that the court just isn't paying for itself. We could dissolve it then if we wanted, or make it go dormant or whichever.
Well, let me throw in a caveat. there.
Okay,
So
throw your caveat.
Everyone's aware. We view the judge as an elected official. So it's not a simple matter of saying, we don't need you anymore. He's entitled, he or she would be entitled to pay through the end of their term. So you can dissolve whenever you want to,
What are the terms?
6 years.
6 years, okay.
So oftentimes decisions to dissolve or interlocal are kind of timed to coincide with
Right.
the upcoming
So we
term.
couldn't do it within a year, but at the end of that term, at 6 years, if we.
Well, I mean, you
find
could,
that
you just
it's,
keep paying them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I mean.
Yeah,
you're
you could
still
shut the
at a
court
loss,
down
but-
whenever you wanted with notice to the council and all of that, judicial council.
Okay, say we get a judge here and he's goes through all the hoops. And then all of a sudden we're like, we really don't like this guy. How do we get a new?
That happens.
Do the same thing with the mayor, right? Mayor gets elected, you don't like him, you're stuck.
So we're stuck for
There are
6
ways
years.
to
You can try to impeach, there's a few things you could attempt. but in
And
all
they're weird, and they're
likelihood-
weird
Which
ways.
is why the process that you're talking about. is so
I've been with
important.
other
It's very
cities where
thorough.
there have been issues and there has been a process to
You have to
relieve
agree
the
to
judge.
this.
Yeah.
I mean, we've
But
been,
it is another
the administrative office tries to intervene. We've got a judicial conduct commission that can intervene. There's discipline that can be imposed by the Supreme Court. There are options. In fact, the judge is more accountable to the citizenry than most elected officials because of all these other things that they have to deal with if things aren't going well. But the fact remains that in all likelihood, you've got them through the term.
Okay.
So that's why it's
I will
important
tell
to
you
pick
though,
well.
I will tell you though, anytime I say, shall so-and-so be retained as a judge, I mark no on all of them.
Even the blind.
All of them. When I'm voting, shall this judge be retained? I vote no on all of them.
Well, see, there's your nominating commission member right there.
So I heard advice and consent from
Yes.
3. I just wanted to make sure.
I agree 100% with the rest of the council. that we need to retain our control is what the word is, but we need to have some say in our judicial system, especially with the politics within our counties.
Well, with that, I think we
Did
can get that
you want-
going.
You feel good about it?
yep, there you go.
Everyone is good.
Any district court or juvenile court questions that you have?
I was gonna ask if, you said you're looking at getting the juvenile court down here
Or the district.
district?
If you want to touch
Well-
on
If the court is dissolved, is that not an option?
Actually, it still remains an option. Thank you for your question. I do want to mention with the potential extended process of seeking a new justice court judge, on October 21st, we'll actually be installing a teleconferencing booth for all courts over at the justice court, something that we've been working with the judge for a while on here. And that'll be delivered here in about a month. And it's a
like a
private
little
booth.
phone booth.
Exactly. It's got the accordion door and there's a large teleconferencing screen there. And a person can actually go in and the clerks will give them a number. They can log into a room and either attend like a justice court or a juvenile court or a district court hearing. And so should you need some coverage from out of town while you're actually working through the judicial selection process or that sort of thing, or should you need the second judge to do a conflict case or something, that would remain available. And then right now we've agreed to put that in kind of that spare room that's sort of between the police station and the justice court. They use it as a waiting room.
So if we're moving to move it down here, can we just install it down here to begin with?
That's something we were
Yeah.
just talking about tonight when we came in, because I just learned about this tonight. So that's something we can talk about.
And this is a booth where we, the courts purchases it with federal ARPA dollars. And then we install it, we maintain the technology within it, and we pay for the dedicated internet line to support it. So the thing that we ask for is space and an electrical plug. So, yeah, certainly I leave it to the council to determine and
Yeah.
How can we get the district court judges to be more hands, put them in jail? Because this slap on the hands is why we're in the state we're in.
Sounds like you need to apply.
Doesn't
We have an applicant.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
council.
Well, and on that note, well, at a minimum, I would think this booth would probably factor into the temporary coverage that we might be looking to arrange here. But let me leave this draft announcement with Dave and work with you to get it finalized. And then we'll get it out to the press later this week. While at the same time down here, we get online, word of mouth, radio ads, newspaper, however you advertise for other positions in the city. Helps us getting up to that magic number. So.
And out applications.
Kids driving up down the streets of town.
Anyway, thank you all very much. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Getting you another judge.
It was very informative. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thanks for coming down.
Yep, sure appreciate it.
Okay.
So we're not getting the juvenile court here in Blanding?
we actually have some juvenile probation officers that are officed here. But we'll be able to actually work teleconferencing with the judge for folks that are locally in Blanding. In addition, I should mention, we offer a lot of therapy, that kind of option to youth that are involved with juvenile court, and we are offering that remotely as well. So the booth will be functional for that purpose also.
Good. Very good.
Hey, thank you guys.
Thanks again.
Yes.
Thank you.
The next discussion item is our raw water commercial cells.
Okay, so Mayor and Council, I'll try to be as brief as possible with this. And if Kim and Terry want to add anything in. Essentially, we have a raw water policy for institutional, churches, schools, the city. It goes at 75% of the culinary rate. So if say, culinary rate sells for $100 a unit, raw water sells for $75 a unit. That's the simple way to put it. And say during the different years based on allocation, based on supply, and any usage above and beyond the 100, say their allocation's $100 a unit, and they're only allotted one unit, but then they use 2 units, then the rate increases, or what they pay on that additional unit increases based on our tiered system that we have. That's the simple way to put it. Now with raw water to commercial, we don't have anything like that in place for commercial. And so we talked about putting something like that in place. We saw some of the concerns that were raised because we didn't have a policy in place with that. What I put together is a comparison of kind of, so right now we sell to the mill, our Energy Fuels raw water. Now, a caveat that I think is important distinction, I met with Logan Shumway to talk about, the mill and the historical usage and sales and all of that. So a little background is, and I'm putting in very, I'm trying to summarize Reader Digest. Essentially, the Conservancy District sold to the mill. And then when we bought that bottom 800 acre feet in the recapture reservoir, we assumed that. And then when that ended, then we have continued doing year-to-year contracts with the mill. Now, recapture reservoir supplies the mill through a pipeline that we don't maintenance, we don't own.
That's not necessarily true.
You're right. So for the most part, if that makes sense, there are little portions of it that we would have to contribute to if maintenance needs were required, if that makes sense. But for the overarching, we have very little maintenance that we do with that. What else was I going to say? We purchased this bottom 800 for about $1.2 million back in, was it 1997, somewhere around there?
97, we bought 300 acre feet, probably late 80s or mid to late 80s, the first 500.
The first 500 was bought in 87, and then the remaining was bought in 1997 in 2 different
Thank you.
purchases.
Now, again, I'm trying to be brief. Essentially, what we're coming down to is trying to decide, well, if you look at the table, let me go to that. That's what I wanted to go to. So I did a comparison of raw water cells for institutional. To the city, to the church, to the youth corrections, to San Juan School District. And there are two other cells that we do that don't fall into those. Energy Fuels is one of them, and the cemetery is one of them. We sell to Energy Fuels at $75 an acre foot, or essentially for 150 acre feet, which is essentially 49 million gallons. The cemetery, we sell about 33 acre feet for $175 an acre foot. So what that translates into is that the mill pays about 10% of the costs of, say, what Flanding City paid on our 4-inch line, or San Juan School District paid on their 3-inch line. But the mill utilizes about 100 times that cost. Now, I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm saying that just that's what the practice has been. So what we looked at, and we saw this and we thought, okay, we need to address this, and we need a consistent policy, because say there was another industrial, commercial business that wanted to come in. Well, based on this precedence, they would have a lot of rationale to get that same rate, if that makes sense. So essentially, here's what it comes down to, and I put this in the back under department review. Well, it's also under discussion, but I'm going to summarize. So what we could do is we can continue just kind of as we are, and year to year, you as a city council can decide, okay, this year we want to sell at $75 an acre foot, or you know what, we really feel like we should sell at $200 an acre foot or $50 an acre foot. We can continue in that way, and you can determine year to year what price you'd like to sell to both the cemetery and to the mill. The other option is that, and this is more where I lean toward, is that we have a system-wide policy for commercial sales of raw water, whether it comes out of recapture, whether it comes out of the third, the fourth, and we have system-wide policy. It's kind of like we do with institutional. So anyone that buys raw water that's an institutional, regardless of where that raw water originates from.
Can we deliver raw water from the third or the fourth?
We do from the third.
Yeah.
Only to those people.
To the park. Yeah.
Park.
Yeah. So
I'll be the line.
what?
On the spot.
Yeah.
18 coming out of the dam.
So we can continue to do kind of as we are year to year. We can establish a citywide, system-wide, I really should say, policy, or say it's for commercial. Maybe we want to incentivize commercial and give a break for commercial. So we say 50% of culinary, or we could say, hey, we want it the exact same as institutional at 75, or we could even go say, hey, we want it at 25. That's for you to determine. I recommend a system-wide. The third option is we could do a hybrid. We're open to that. To me, the most important thing is getting a consistent policy in place. In talking to Logan Shumway, he kind of brought up some hybrid type options as well. One could be we could have a system-wide policy for everything for commercial raw water sales, for everything except recapture, and then recapture, we have a specific policy for water sold at a recapture, if that makes sense. We could do something like system-wide policy for the rest of the system, and then recapture, we still leave it open-ended year to year, or we do a long-term agreement. One thing that Logan proposed to me was that what if we did a longer-term agreement where anything in excess of the allocation that we're able to sell, so say, I'm just making up numbers, say we have 500 acre feet, and that's the most we even have potential to sell. And this year we have 800 acre feet. We have an agreement with the mill to sell them at least 150 acre feet of that excess. The only downside to that is that's a guaranteed water for them. Go ahead.
Logan, what's the most amount of water you've ever used out of recapture?
I couldn't say for sure, but there's been years where it's been, I mean, the mill is always obligated. See, it was, I mean, it's, I don't know, I mean, I could provide a lot of commentary, maybe we do it next time, which I think is important, and relevant in all this conversation, but you know, they were always obligated by 500 acre feet, and then they had an option to buy an additional 500.
And you've only had an option for 150 now?
Well, that's
Now-
been the
now
year.
That's been expired, so now we just bought based on availability each year.
So the 500 he's referring to is
Isn't
when.
that a better policy? We have X amount available to sell this year. This coming year, we might have this much to sell.
I think it's gonna be extremely difficult to put anything down on paper, because it changes so much from year to year. I mean, literally every year it's different. One year, people are willing to pay, well, not until just recently, these higher rates, but just a few years ago, and Terry can chime in better than me probably, but $75 an acre foot was a lot, up until just a few years ago. I mean, I think it was more $35, $40, that there was a fair amount of water that would maybe go to agricultural use. But a big point here is there's a big difference between the recapture usage and the third and fourth usage. I mean, I don't even feel like they're the same conversation.
They're
as far as
not,
water
yeah,
is.
they're not.
So, but so your question, possibly up to 1,000 acre feet in like really busy going years.
So if I can add to some of that, a couple thoughts that I had was, trying to think, sorry, I had a few thoughts in my head. One point, actually, Kim, will you speak to kind of the financial side of it that you and I spoke about earlier, and some of the points that you brought up with recapture specifically?
Well, my thought was from a financial standpoint is the city has paid 1.2 million for this water. And we need to make sure we're just not giving it away, that we're recouping some of those funds for other things, for maintenance on other areas, that if we don't want to just give it away, we don't want to waste it, we don't want it to evaporate and go away, but I think we need to look at bringing some of that money back into the city for the water infrastructure, whether it's on recapture or whether it's, wherever it's at. We need to make sure we're not just giving that water away and we need to recoup some of that 1.2. I just keep repeating myself because, we have these projects come up and I think we need to be diligent in trying to bring some of those funds back.
So on that note, the other part that Kim and I spoke about is, and this is why I preference more of a system-wide approach, is right now, if say something occurred with the line that goes out to the mill or any other portion of the system with recapture specifically, the funding to pay for those improvements would be subsidized by the rest of the system. And that's kind of the financial point, is right now, the revenues we're generating through recapture aren't recouping the costs to have purchased that water and are not sustaining enough capital of revenue for repairs. The rest of the system would be subsidizing recapture. And so while recapture is a different system in itself, financially speaking, it's not. And that's kind of more my concern from a budgetary
I
standpoint.
guess Logan, I should have listed a conflict because that pipeline is maintained by the San Juan Water Conservancy and Blanding Irrigation. Blanding City is part of Blanding Irrigation. If there's damage to that line, it's every user down the line that's going to get a fee jacked up to repair any of the lines. So
On average, how much do we have in excess in recapture? I mean, like, I know that it's
Variable.
changes all the time, but
Yeah, we kind of cycle with a good winter here and there every 3 years or so. And so on a year, we have really good snow, like we're going to have this
I
winter.
was going to say, can I hold you to that?
Deer moving down early and they turn gray a little bit early, so we're going for the big winter.
There you go.
Um,
Nice.
Your mouth, God's ears.
So you'll say we have a good winter this winter, we're gonna have plenty of water and recapture, it's gonna fill, it's gonna spill. And if we don't sell any of that water out at recapture, we've just done nothing with our water.
Right.
We got no money back into the system out of it. If we price it too high and Energy Fuels or some other potential customer doesn't want it, we're kind of just net zero. The following year, typically you're going to have some water remaining out there. The city likely also isn't going to need water, fairly typical. And so we would want to again sell some water out of that 800 acre feet, because as the pool drops November 1, if you're still above conservation pool, all of that water is ours. And then, maybe on the third year, you might not have any to sell, because we would be eager to pump some up to the third reservoir to handle our parks, school district, our institutional customers that do pay currently at quite a bit higher rate. And
So for example, our 4-inch line here for a city park, we as a city paid just under $750 for 15 acre feet. We paid almost 11,000, whereas the mill paid $75 an acre foot, a little over 11,000 for 150 acre feet. And to me, that's too big of a disparity. And that's why I'm looking for at least a system-wide policy, or if the council's leaning toward doing some sort of hybrid where we do something a little bit different approach with recapture, we still need to look at the rest of the system-wide for commercial sales. Because I'm not just thinking about, even though the situation with the mill and the cemetery, so I want to make sure it's not just the mill single out, there are uniqueness with both of those. Even though we're talking about that today, really I'm thinking in terms of tomorrow. If someone else were to come in, I want a policy. We saw earlier this year the issues that arise, even though it's not apples to apples with necessarily the mill, but when you have apples to apples with and you do it year to year, or contractor to contractor, or business to business. I mean, if we sold, if the council wanted to do recapture and sell 500 or 10 acre feet to one contractor for $300 an acre foot, but then the other contractor, the council's like, well, we want to sell them to $100 an acre foot. That's when we start getting into trouble. And that's why I need some sort of baseline policy and criteria.
I mean, personally, I don't like one size fits all blanket policy that covers everything. I don't feel like that's appropriate for what we're dealing with. And I mean, the council can decide what they, where we want to go with this discussion, but I do think the discussion is important to have. And I think that we need to have the conversation about what we want to do, whether that's nothing. I think it's important to talk about it, but I do think that there's something that maybe we can work up. With that said, I don't like a one size fits all, everybody pays the same. I think that there's different things that play into that. So
Right
that's
now-
my kind of thoughts
Right
on
now, we kind
direction.
of do that with institutional, but yet we make a random exception for the cemetery. To me, I see that as an issue. And so we could leave it open-ended. So say, this is the example I keep giving, say a Tyson Chicken comes in and wants to do a plant, and they're gonna need 500 acre feet, or well, maybe I'll go less, they'll need 200 acre feet, and they're willing to build the line all the way to recapture. What do we sell it to them at, right? And I know that's totally hypothetical, not super likely, at least today's terms, but does the council want to leave it so that, okay, here's the baseline of, here's like a base rate that everybody has to pay, and then outside of that, maybe to incentivize for economic development or something, you say, hey, we want to sell, above and beyond that base rate at, and you set the rate, if that makes sense. That does happen. I see that less with water in the rest of the state. Usually water, it is one size fits all. As a matter of fact, when I was up north, when businesses and other things would come in, and I know we're not big city and things like that, but they had to bring the water rights to the table, a business that came in, and they had to pay the rates that were established by whichever municipality. There are exceptions and caveats, and so I'm
I
like,
mean, were they having water come from different places like you would hear too, when they had that kind of one size fits all?
yeah,
It is
yeah,
some, but
different
not
systems,
most.
yeah. So for example, some of these water districts, essentially, they have various different reservoirs or towers or wells or whatever the case might be. But the rates are not fluctuation based on necessarily who it is. It may be based on type of business or type of cell. And that's more where I'm going with it. So
for here today, our question is, are we charging Energy Fuels enough, right? I think that's one question. And do we need to consider a commercial policy for any future commercial economic development that would happen in Blanding
and then from there, I would say,
or the surrounding area?
right. And what we're really looking for is this, Terry drafted a policy and then we were talking through things and talking the rounds. And I really said, I really don't know. I don't want to take a policy for approval to the council and like, this is not the direction we want to go at all, right? And maybe it is what he drafted very well might be, but I wanted to get advice and consent which direction, and then we'll draft the policy accordingly. If that
Is
makes
there a
sense.
timeline on this? I mean, are we
Well,
stuck to anything?
the only timeline is if the council wants to get this done before we renew with the mill. If that's not a concern for you, we'll just renew with the mill, kind of like we did last year.
When is the renewal with the middle?
If fall time, October, November.
Well, it depends. Typically starts November 1st, but we have no water recapture or conservation. So until we get runoff, there can't be a contract.
So it doesn't matter at this point anyways.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, I think water is an important enough topic, and I think that it matters enough. And I think people that have sat here before have had discussions similar to this that have maybe prepared for what we have now. I mean, I think it's important enough that would do a disservice if we sped through something and came up with something that covered everything, or we felt like covered everything. I feel like this might take a little longer than maybe what we want it to.
You know, a thought I just had, so kind of what I was looking for tonight, but if you're okay, I don't want to let it prolong too much because I don't want another situation like what we had earlier this year. But what I was looking for tonight is, hey, one of these three approaches across the board, keep doing what we're doing, or some sort of hybrid. I was looking for a direction one way or another. But what I could do is I could actually reach out to some of these other water districts and just maybe start getting an idea of how they differentiate those types of
They
things.
have more water than we do.
Well, that's true.
Well, for me, the question I look is, if we did have a commercial developer come in that would we be willing to sell them water at the same rates that we sell to Energy Fuels?
And we wouldn't, no. That's the issue at hand.
But my other question is, do we need to address that? I mean, we might want to look at what we're charging Energy Fuels, but do we need to address that now, or can we address it if it ever happens?
I would say we address it through the policy. That's kind of what we're trying to do, is address it through the policy, because kind of like Terry just mentioned, it's almost moot right now, because even if we renewed the contract, there's not enough excess, or there is no excess to do. So I don't think that we have to necessarily address the mill specifically today. My thought is, let's do this the right way, kind of like the mayor saying, let's talk through a policy that's going to function and that everybody at the table can agree on. Now, Kim actually just reminded me.
I can do some research, just random Google on raw water amounts, and they were anywhere from
Raw water rates.
rates, anywhere from 89 cents a thousand to $2.99 a thousand. So it's all over the place, but that's going to be based on, just like Eric says, probably on what is the ability of having the water. And I think, just in my mind, I'm thinking that's something that has to be considered. Don't you wish we had a crystal ball and we could see what's going to happen? Because that would make it a lot easier,
What I
right?
would like to see happen is we set a goal to have this done by February's first meeting in February.
I would love that.
What's the, I mean, is it
Have
just
to have a
having
raw
just-
water policy.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
There's nothing happening then, just, it would be
It's
nice to have it.
just
done
get
by
Just to
then.
have a goal, to have something to work towards.
And if we find hurdles or something, hopefully we get it done sooner. If we
Right.
have hurdles in the way, we'll
Right.
keep you informed.
I agree. I think we need to have a policy in place. I mean, we've seen what happens when we don't have a policy. I also feel like we need to have some accommodation for commercial operators. You know, in my mind, it'd be fair and equitable to have, if a commercial operator is gonna purchase between, 0 and 50 units, purchase it at this price. If they're purchasing 50 to 150 units, maybe they get a discounted price.
So the only thing I would say to that is generally, you see that in other forms of sales, but with water, you see the opposite because you want to incentivize conservation.
See, and what I see as a recapture water user is there's a lot of people that all of a sudden, oh, I've got a pipe on my land and I have a spout here, so I should get water. I have a hard time if they don't own shares in the system, being able to use it. But as the mill, I believe the mill, they don't own shares, but they do own shares because they've been there since the very beginning of this process.
They essentially lease those shares, essentially what they're doing, right?
But they don't, but they have ownership because they've been a user for so long. These other people just spring up out of nowhere and go, oh, I want water. Well,
Right.
so do I, but it doesn't always
We also
happen.
do need to encourage economic growth within the city as well. And I don't know, maybe that's not what you're talking about. Maybe you're talking about a random landowner.
Well, we do.
That's what I'm talking about. There's just random people that are like, oh, that line crosses me, so I should have water out of it. Like, well, no, you shouldn't, because you didn't go through the blood, sweat, and tears of not having the pipeline and then putting the pipeline in. And some years people don't use any water, but then all of a sudden there's a ton of water and all of a sudden they want to open taps and let it go.
Kim just reminded me of something else. And this is something actually Len and I talked about the other day. Len was under the impression, as was I originally, that we were the only source for the mill to receive water. But the mill actually does have wells of their own. And I can't speak to the functionality of those wells or any of that. But my understanding, and Logan, you can totally correct me if I'm wrong, is they purchase from the city because it's cheaper to purchase from the city than to run the pumps on their own wells. And so that for me is almost another reason to say, hey, why are we charging so little and not putting back into our capital revenue for maintenance of the system as a whole?
Yeah, I think that,
Oh,
I think
sorry.
having a goal, an end date goal is a good thing. I like what Councilmember Grover said as far as that goes. And I also think we're not going to solve this tonight.
I totally
So,
agree.
so I think that all of this is good because we need to consider it.
Honestly, what I would like to do is have a few, probably 2 or 3 discussions until we get a policy that we really feel comfortable about, a draft policy and discussion, and then bring it to you for approval. Just to build on something Kim said earlier on the rates that she did. So if you look right now, she mentioned that nationwide, some of the rates she looked at were between like 89 cents and $2. Right now to the mill, we're selling, and that's right in line. If you look at all the other entities, it's around $1.50 to $2. If you look at the mill and the cemetery, we're selling at 23 cents and 54 cents. Per 1,000 gallons, I'm sorry, and that's what I should have said. So everywhere else, our raw water sales are pretty relative, but here it's not. And so, like I said, we're not going to solve it tonight, but I think.
And I'm not saying that if there's
How does
more
it-
discussion that can happen tonight. I'm not
Exactly,
shutting this down.
And I just have a quick question. So what happens, the mill works with the city when we don't have raw water to sell? Do you just not get any?
Yeah, if it's
So
not.
you
there's no-
just have to use your wells. If we don't have water to sell, you figure out another way.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to be on the agenda when this gets discussed a little bit more, because there's a lot here, and yeah, it changes from year to year drastically. I mean, there's some years where you will get, right, the city owns shares, so it is not the city's pipeline coming out of recapture. It is, they own a portion of it, just like Eric or whoever else owns a share, and they have to pay an assessment on that. And there's a sunk cost every year. And like the year the water goes out the spillway, which we hope we see again. I mean, there's nobody to buy water that. I mean, everybody has all the water they want. So I mean, there's the extreme year that year where it's like literally if you can get $10 an acre foot, you're ahead. But then there's other years where it's extremely, tough to come by and people are I mean, 150, if you say that a few years ago, that's crazy talk, but now that's more of a reality. So it really does, it varies a lot from year to year. But we can work something out that makes sense for everybody.
Well, unlike this year, I'm gonna get assessed a bill for probably $6,000 or $7,000 and I haven't got a drop of water.
Right, and the city will.
Yeah, the city's gonna get the same bill.
Yeah, we won't be assessed on that 800 acre feet.
No, but
Share
you're
water.
still gonna get share water assessment. Your 800 acre feet is your 800 acre feet. I should say yours,
So then
ours.
it makes sense that the mill has a situation where you have to pay for a certain amount, whether you use it or not.
Sorry, say that.
So you said in the past you had an agreement where you would pay for a certain amount, whether you use that amount or not.
Well, no, I mean, right, in the past, there was just more water. And so the way it worked in the very beginning days is they were obligated, the owners of the mill were obligated to pay for 500 acre feet a year. And that was part of the funding, the way I understand is like, hey, if we can secure a buyer for this, we can make this whole dam and this whole system happen.
That's why I feel like
20 or 25, it was a long-term agreement and that's
why I feel like the mill's the exception. That's why they're the exception, because they help fund that project even though they don't own water.
So, but again, there's a lot to understand here. I mean, I'll just be, candid about this. I don't think it's really not a fair comparison to talk about this water next to it for a lot of reasons, but we can work something out that I think works for everybody. I really do. So.
And I would agree with Logan, what he's saying from the actual system itself. My concern, Kim's, and you can tell me I disagree with Kim if you want, but really our concern is the funding system wide of the capital and replacement and how much we've paid to purchase it. The benefit of having the bottom 800 is it's not like a use it or lose it for us, right? Where it is with some of the others. So that's the benefit. But we're just trying to look at how is what we're doing with recapture giving back into the capital revenue. So I 100% agree, recapture is different as a physical system, but as a financial system, it's part of the water department. And that's where I'm really trying to focus in on right now. And I think there's a balance that we could do.
I just wanted to ask a question before you moved on regarding the 500 acre foot. Was that from the city or was that from the conservancy?
Started with.
Yes.
It was the conservancy.
Conservancy, when we
That's what
bought
we
it from the
inherited.
conservancy, we assumed that
Because I've been back through the minutes. I can't.
the mill paid
find
for
anything.
500 acre feet a year, whether they used it or not, and they also had the first right of refusal on the next 500. The rest of the city's 800 plus the 200 that the Water Conservancy District.
So what,
I learned something, but I haven't seen anything on that.
so one of the hybrid approaches that Logan mentioned to me is, okay, say we do a system-wide thing for everything on commercial raw water sales, and then recapture, we have, kind of an agreement with the mill where in excess, and you can explain this better if I explain it wrong, but say we agree with them that if we have excess, that essentially they have first right of refusal to the first 150 acre feet of excess that the city maybe does not need to utilize. So say there's a year where we're like, no, we need this excess. It's first right of refusal outside of that. That's an idea that he proposed. And honestly, Logan, I kind of want to get direction from the council of how to start formulating the policy or more things to look into. So if there's anything else that you feel like is real pertinent tonight to mention, I'd love to have you contribute.
Yeah.
Mayor, if that's okay.
No, I
guess
think it's.
it gets complicated. What is excess, right? That 800 acre feet, it'd be nice to, Terry needs to put on a workshop sometime. Legitimately.
He's done private workshops for me.
That 800 acre feet, it is a use it or lose it situation, because if you were to pull down that 800 acre feet and then it gets replenished the next year and you could sell it again in that scenario. If you just leave it there, you get nothing for it and all the excess water goes to somebody else. It is not a
That makes
simple
sense.
situation.
But if there's water, if there's only 200 acre feet in the pool above the conservation pool, boom, it's the city's no matter what. Anything that comes in, any water that goes in,
Starting at.
yeah.
I mean, it's allocated, ownership is.
But if it's,
based on the
if we're a
level.
conservation pool and then the city's water, and that's the water that's in there next year, it's still there.
It's still there and it doesn't get replaced
Right.
is my point. But if you used it, then you
Then you
get, and there's runoff, then you get another.
But it gets replenished before anybody else's water.
That's correct.
And they don't take any leakage either.
I think, yeah.
And that's
Look
why,
that up, kudos.
and that's why Couch, I mean, he gave a specific scenario where it could be use it or lose it, but for the most part, we've got the best deal with recapture. So financially speaking, I'm not as worried about that. But I am concerned about the rates. And so, I guess what I'm looking for from council, if you want to give advice and consent to go a certain policy direction, or if you want to give advice and consent to come up with a couple policy ideas and a couple directions, we can do that.
My vote is get a couple directions and come back to us. Right now, I believe we're beating a dead horse.
Yeah, I would somewhat agree with
I still
that.
think we need
I
that.
think the conversation's good, so we know what direction we're heading and that we want to, like, where we want to go. So I think that the general idea is that,
Well, I just gonna say, I think policies, we definitely have to have some kind of a policy, just to get started. Whether it's a hybrid approach or straight across the board. But one of the two's got to be, set up, just to make it right for everybody, so.
I would imagine a policy that differentiates the mill from any future commercial development. That's what I would
Exception to
do.
the, the hybrid.
Specifically, or raw
Different.
water from recapture?
You know,
Yeah,
the
I
mill
would say more than
specifically
that.
because of the circumstances that Eric discussed. So they would be a kind of a separate, and I'm not saying the rates should not be looked at. I think they should, but they would be a separate entity from future commercial development. So they're not all on an even playing field because of the things that Eric mentioned. And so they could be treated differently than the mill.
The only thing I would say, it's interesting because what I was about to say, while Councilmember Gosser was talking, is generally entities like the mill or, like we had with the situation with the airport, there may be individuals or entities that bring up an issue and that moves you forward to create a policy. They may be what was the catalyst for the policy, but it's usually bad practice to form a policy that caters to an individual or an entity.
That's what I'm saying. They would
So-
be that would be almost a grandfathered situation with future commercial development. That's only my take. I don't know how the rest of the
Sure,
council feels, but I don't think you're going to find a system that works for them and future commercial development in blending,
I appreciate
in
that.
my personal opinion.
So I even need more time. I mean, I haven't spent much time on this recently, but something similar to what was in place in the early days could make sense, where it's a term agreement, kind of obligated to buy so many acre feet. And then just one question, who else? I mean, there's farmers that the city has sold water to in the past, but what are the other users that have happened out of recapture? I mean,
We haven't traditionally sold any water out of recapture for the most part for ag use at all, as far as the 800 acre feet. Only when we have irrigation shares in recapture, then we'll sometimes lease some to recoup our assessments. But we haven't traditionally sold a lot of that 800 acre feet. We did the 10 acre feet this spring with the conservancy district. And I'm sure there's been a few times when we've done something, but typically we don't sell that for ag.
yeah, I mean, so here's my just honest take is just me just trying. Anyways, the mill, it's good for the mill to have it. They can get by without it in a lot of cases, but it's difficult. It's easier to just turn on a faucet, so to speak, versus, I mean, you guys know how the wells are. It's kind of a different situation. And there's not many potential buyers of that water out of recapture. I mean, the mill is mostly it. I mean, if you're talking ag, I mean, if there's any water to have, they usually have their own, and it's at cheaper rates even than the 75. Doesn't mean that that can't go up. But it's kind of a win-win. There's nobody else to sell it to. And it is good for the operations at the mill. So I think there's something that can be worked out, and maybe just as, as far as trying to draw something up, maybe you look at something that was similar to what was initially started. Yes, we agree to sell you this much if there's water. The old days there kind of always was, now it's different, but like
Yeah.
10-year agreement or something.
It may not be the same quantities or rate or whatever, but.
Same idea.
Yeah. So what we can do is we can
Look
look
at
at we can put together, I don't think we're gonna put together like a full policy, but basically put together like the skeleton, what a
General
couple different
ideas.
policy options may look like. For you to kind of chew on, and I can even send those to you as a council just through email, get your individual feedback. And then when I get individual feedback on some of those, obviously Logan and I met and talked about it, but I agree. I think we need to chew on it a little bit more. I think the main thing that I would say high level is, sounds like considerations is we're considering the distinctions, the historical distinctions. We're considering future distinctions that may arise. And most importantly, we're considering the financial or the capital well-being of recapture and how does recapture contribute to the system, and the rates that we're doing, are they sufficient? Those three things I think are important.
I think it's a good starting point. Councilmember Nelson, did you have?
So I just was gonna actually ask, kind of, I'm gonna address it, but I had on here that would a good long-term contract with the mill, giving them first right of refusal for the water, would that solve some of those issues going forward too?
It could, yeah, I think that's kind of what you're getting at, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how, maybe, I don't know, policy wise, but just depending on the situation, well, you put a contract in place, then that is the policy. Two parties agree to it, and then that is the policy.
Right.
I would say though, if we did a contract, because I see where you're going, maybe we do a contract with them while we're putting together the policy.
You could possibly do that, yeah, but a couple of things too. I think they are different. I think it should be treated differently. I don't think you should have a one size fits all. And
Okay.
what was the other point I was gonna bring up? But I don't think you're gonna solve the financial agreement by raising the cost. You're talking about 1.2 million. I understand maybe raising the rate some, but I don't think that's really.
I don't think you're gonna solve it all.
I think it needs to be, I think my thought is it needs to be more reasonable. For example, if I were the school district or if I were the church and even though there are distinctions, I would be like, whoa. And that's actually what caught my attention initially. It's like, whoa, us as a city, we're paying $11,000 for 10% of the same usage of water.
Right.
Why are we doing that? That's what initiated some of my question, right? And so I think the rate does, I agree, it's not going to completely recoup all of our costs or supplement it, but I do think it needs to be more reasonable, reasonably close, or some sort of change. What I'm hearing from the council though is, unless there's interest for an across the board, but I am hearing more of a hybrid approach, but I'm happy to put together one of across the board, a hybrid approach, or maybe two hybrid approaches, or three.
Yeah, no, I think we start somewhere and then we'll kind of make it fit how we feel like we need to. So
I think across the board, we need to look at it, and then a hybrid approach, and like you said, maybe even two different options would be.
Okay.
I think we could all come to some agreement after all that.
I think we'll get us started.
Do you mind if I just, with Councilmember Grover and Councilmember Ewald, what are your thoughts on what approaches to look at?
Across the board and a hybrid.
Same, okay.
I agree. Let's look at all the different approaches.
And what I'll do, and one thing that Logan and I had talked about is as he gets to chew on it a little bit more, if he wants to email me kind of his skeleton of maybe what a hybrid approach might look like, or a distinction in our policy might look like.
Well, as we go, I think, like you said, I think it would be good to have him on the agenda to kind of iron some of that out as we go. Like once we get some things going, I think that the February date's a good date. It doesn't rush us, but it gives us a time to say, hey, we need to do this and not just sit on our pockets.
And my thought on the agenda, I mean, I specifically reached out to Logan to be here tonight.
Yeah.
To me, he is part of the
Right,
agenda because I
right.
knew he'd be part of the
But if there's,
discussion,
yeah,
so.
when there's more and if there's things that we are talking about that are maybe a little specific to that, I feel like this is valuable. So, okay.
I'd like more discussion on this issue of, they are the purchaser of water from the reservoir, and if they don't purchase it because we price it too high, what happens to that water? The situation where I would like to have more discussion about that.
I guess my only thought about that is it's $11,000. There's a lot.
Maintenance, upkeep.
Yeah,
administration.
there's
No,
other
I
ways
get
to
that,
get
yeah.
$11,000. So it's not like it would be a huge loss, but I do agree that it would be some
Right.
loss. So.
We gotta, think about it all. Okay. I think we're good with that for tonight.
Thanks, Council.
Business items. So we got resolution 9/27/2022-1. This is the contract for the AMI metering system. Kim defers to Terry. Kim tags Terry.
They are tag teaming.
We talked about the AMI system. We included the proposal in there from Power West Engineering / Candelas. It was approved in the budget. We just need the okay to move forward with the signature. We can sign that sales agreement and start moving to get that system installed and working. Our current system is limping along still. It's better than it was 2 months ago. So
And this was in the budget.
this is budget.
And I mean, nothing's changed as far as what we budgeted for.
No, there will be some, right now, the budget is the 400 and,
29,000.
we budgeted the whole ARPA, the
Uh-huh.
ARPA money for the project, but just this beginning part is 187 on that. And then we will have to purchase a few other things along the way, but this is just to get this up and
Okay.
going. And I'm excited. We've sat through a couple of demonstrations, and having 3 meetings with 2 or 3 meetings with Power West and Candelas, and
What's the, and maybe it's in here, timeline.
timeline on that.
I don't even know if we've established a timeline, so we're looking, some of the parts of the project or other phases. The city is responsible to install the repeaters and collectors and the 300 meters around town. And they're supposed to be working on some pricing for a contractor to do that for us, which we'd like to do with the ARPA money. We don't really have the bandwidth to get all that done. I mean, we can if we have to. They threw out a ballpark number of 20,000 that they quoted helpers kind of in the same process that we're in. They're just a few months ahead of us. And they have more endpoints than we have, so I would expect that quote would be something that would be really appealing to us to move forward. We're gonna have some work to get a customer endpoint. The customer endpoint would be, hopefully it's an app that our customers can use, and they'll be able to access their water meter reading all the time and see where they're at with respect to water conservation. Of course, they'd also be able to use that to look at their power consumption, as we keep going to more electrification in our country. That's going to become a bigger and bigger deal to our customers. Natural gas, kind of the same thing. So the customer endpoint's a big deal. When we get done with this part of the project, we still don't have automated meter reading on our commercial electric. That's something that we need to do, and we'll be looking to fund that. Likely, we can't do that with the ARPA money because that needs to be water and sewer. So that's going to have to come from electric funds. And then the same thing with commercial gas. Commercial gas meters are challenging to make auto read, radio read, whereas electric will be are pretty easy. We just need the money to get it done. I don't know what other phases of work will we have beyond this, Cam. I mean, really a lot of water meters. I mean, the water meters are, the great thing is the ARPA money can be used on water and the water meters are the expensive ones. And so we would look to get, institutional customers, our own parks, school district, LDS church, those customers that are our bigger water users, and then we can help those customers be a little more accountable for their water use and understand where they're at, how much they're using, be a really good tool.
I can give an example. We had that would have helped the customer. We had a customer that came in a couple months ago and he had a water leak. And he didn't know he had a water leak until he got his bill, and he has used, his bill was almost $600 for that month just for water. So of course I will work with him to string that out over a couple of months and get caught up on that. But what we didn't realize was the leak occurred between 2 meter readings. And so the next month when it come in, there was additional dollars on that leak that didn't get caught. With this system, we should be able to program that to alarm us if there seems to be an overabundance. We can set it to say, let us know if we have somebody that is running this much water.
So like when I leave my
So that
water and my horses for 5 hours, you can
Yes,
count?
so we can catch,
Eric, wake up.
we can catch it, and then when we get the customer portal up and going, they would be alarmed of that, so it would save them money.
So we need to make a motion here?
Yeah, we need a motion.
I make a motion, we approve resolution 09-27-2022-1. The resolution approving the sales contract between Power West, whoever they are, and Blanding City.
A second that.
Okay, that's a motion by Councilmember Grover, seconded by Councilmember Ewald for resolution 9/27/2022-1. Any questions on the motion? All in favor? That's everybody. Okay, I am not aware of a closed session.
I have something very brief, yeah.
Unfortunately.
Okay, yes, okay. Then I would accept a motion to go to closed session.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Councilmember Nielsen, Councilmember Ewald, all in favor? Okay,
Who was the second?
Nelson and Ewald.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My phone works good, thank you.
Tell me, kid.
Oh, wait, we just went 5.
You got shoes on it?
No,
Can I start riding her tomorrow?
Go ahead. I've ridden her. I like her. I'm just not
Oh,
gonna
the
have.
other one you told me 3.
I'm
You
just
didn't come up with the price for the colt.
3.
You
What
told
are
me
you
you were
talking
gonna sell the other horse
about?
too.
Oh, well, I'm gonna keep him.
We're still going live. You guys talking about your horses. Sell that horse.